Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was requested independently by several sources, which leads me to believe it may have come from the True Stories collection. Amy controls a forest and a Llanowar Elves equipped with Umbral Mantle. Can she give the elf +2/+2 by tapping it and the forest, then untapping the elf and tapping it again to generate the third mana required to pay for the cost of Umbral Mantle's ability? Alright, so the first thing that we'll need to answer this question is that you can pay the costs to cast a spell in any order. Activating an ability follows all the same rules, so that applies to the situation we're considering here too. At first this makes it look like this trick should work, since you could pay the mana cost after you pay the untap cost, even though the mana is written first in the text of the ability. Unfortunately, there's a catch. When you're casting a spell, there's a specific series of steps you need to follow in order. First, you calculate the cost, then you get a chance to activate mana abilities, and then you pay the cost. There's no way to start the process of paying costs with 3 mana in your mana pool, because getting that third mana would require untapping the Llanowar Elves. Since that doesn't happen until after you actually start the step where you're paying the costs, this trick does not work. Now, if you've been a fan of the channel for a while now, you might recall that mechanics like Convoke actually function a little bit differently, because tapping the creature with Convoke, in fact, does happen in the step where you're paying costs. You might be wondering whether it would be possible to tap and untap if some activated ability with an untap cost had water bending or something. As far as I know, this technically would work, and I say technically because I'm not aware of any way to realize this in a game with cards that were actually printed. And I'm fairly certain that if such a situation were to come up, the rules would be changed somehow to close that loophole. Now, there's one more thing that I wanted to point out related to this issue. I said that the trick from the original problem statement would not work because the step where you activate mana abilities happens before the step where you pay the costs. Does that mean that you could sacrifice a Thalia to a Thermopod and cast Lightning Bolt without any other mana? Well, of course you could do that. You just need to sacrifice the Thalia for a red, float the mana, and then start casting Lightning Bolt, which now costs just 1 mana now that Thalia is dead. But could you do it without floating mana if you sacrifice the Thalia during the process of casting Lightning Bolt? I also said that you could pay the costs in any order. If you're casting a Village Rites, could you sacrifice Thalia before paying mana so that your spell would only cost 1 mana? And unfortunately, the answer is no. Recall that in the process of casting a spell, the step where you calculate the cost happens before the step where you pay the cost, and also the step where you can activate mana abilities. Once the cost gets calculated, it's locked in, and it does not change after that point. Even though it is possible to sacrifice the Thalia before you pay the mana cost in both the Thermopod and the Village Rites examples, the step where you sacrifice happens after the cost is calculated, which means that the cost will not go back down after Thalia is sacrificed. On the plus side, this means this trick works a lot better with cost reducers. One well-known application of this was discussed in my video on Emery plus Chromatic Star. That's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.